LeeReads, where I talk about the books I've been reading and enjoying lately. One thing that's great about browsing through NetGalley to look for books that publishers might let me read early is getting a sense of what is coming out within the next few months. And through browsing there and just being excited for certain sequels and new works by favorite authors, I've put together a short list of the novels coming out in 2025 that are already on my radar. Some of these I'm lucky enough to have an advanced digital copy of, but others I have pre-ordered and will eagerly await them. I want to tell you about them in the order of publication, starting with January 2025, an adult fantasy called The Outcast Mage. This is about a mage bereft of her powers. She must find out if she's destined to save the world or destroy it, and it's pitched as for fans of Andrea Stewart and James Islington. Looking through the back cover of it, I think there's a little bit of that magic school setting, but more reminiscent of The Will of the Many, and that's what really piqued my interest for this one. Plus, I really love that cover. Coming out in February is Grave Empire by Richard Swan. Richard Swan wrote the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. I really enjoyed all 3 installments in that trilogy, and this is a new fantasy, new, fresh world about an empire on the verge of industrial revolution where sorcery and arcane practices are outlawed, and an ancient prophecy is proclaiming the forthcoming end of days. Knowing what he did with the Empire of the Wolf trilogy, I'm really excited to see what he does with this sort of outlawed magic, industrial revolution, like all of that coming together. Next in April, another fantasy, City of Seasons, and the first thing I thought of when I read about this one was The City in the City by China Miéville, like a fantasy version. A vibrant and emotional science fantasy about 2 cousins trapped in mirrored worlds. One is an eternal summer and the other is an eternal winter. For fans of Every Heart a Doorway and This Is How You Lose the Time War. So maybe a little bit Portal-esque, but This Is How You Lose the Time War, it makes me think that they'll be communicating to each other somehow or maybe illicitly across these worlds. I'm also really hoping that the mirrored worlds are layered like in City in the City, so we'll see. In April, we have A Drop of Corruption, which is the next installment by Robert Jackson Bennett following The Tainted Cup, which is one of my top reads this year. In this one, at the edge of the Empire's reach, a treasury official has vanished into thin air, abducted from his quarters while the door and windows remain locked and sealed. From the inside, in a building where all the entrances and exits are under constant guard, and I think it turns into a murder investigation similar to in The Tainted Cup. So our 2 main characters that we met there are going to solve this mystery. Hopefully the world building will be expanding. This ever-present external threat of like these monsters encroaching from the sea, and of course the environment itself, the flora and the fauna of the world trying to kill them, and they're like trying to biohack ways around that. It's a very cool world. Also in April, a new contemporary romance by Emily Henry. Emily Henry is one of my top favorite contemporary romance authors because she writes this backbone of some other emotional, internal or external conflict with the main characters and merges that so well with whatever's going on in the forming, budding relationship that I think they're pretty hard hitting. There's a lot of depth to these stories. Her next book is called A Great Big Beautiful Life, and it's about 2 writers who are competing for the chance to tell the story of a larger than life woman with more than one plot twist up her sleeve. So that sounds very intriguing to me. In May, we have The Strength of the Few coming out, which is the next after The Will of the Many by James Islington. Or Islington, I'm never quite sure how to say it. The Will of the Many was one of my favorite books last year, and it emerged victorious in my tournament style like showdown of my favorite novels that I like to do at the end of the year. This is a Roman inspired fantasy world where the magic, this will, is like seeded up from lower classes through the higher classes. Books with Emily Fox describe it as like a multi-level marketing scheme or a pyramid scheme for magic, and it's kind of true. But the lower classes, the lowercase systems, they don't really have a choice. They're seeding their will up, and so exponentially each level is getting more powerful and more powerful, and the main character has an interesting backstory. I won't really get into that, but he winds up blackmailed into the Magic Academy for the elite, where they're not actually allowed to use this magic, yet they're learning how to use this magic, and there's a lot of politics. He is supposed to be acting as a spy, but because of his backstory, he has his own goals, and I'm really looking forward to the strength of the few. In May, we have The Night and the Moth, which I think is romantasy, and it's by Rachel Gellig, who wrote One Dark Window. I really liked One Dark Window. It was kind of gothic and dark. It had a really interesting magic system to it. The Night and the Moth is a gothic and mist-cloaked tale of a prophetess who is forced beyond the safety of her cloister walls on an impossible quest to defeat a god, with the one knight whose future is beyond her sight. My main draws to this book were first the cover, and then I realized it was by Rachel Gellig, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this one. In July, we have The Bewitching, which is a new fantasy horror story about these 3 witches across different time periods. They encounter witchcraft and danger in this eerie, multi-generational saga. This author is one whose horror I've really enjoyed. When I read Mexican Gothic, I'm pretty sure my face was just like twisted into this horrified expression the entire time, because there was a little bit of body horror. So continuing my forays into reading more horror on a more lighthearted note, I suspect. I saw this book and I was very excited. The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. What made me instantly pre-order this is that the author actually writes in one of the fandoms I enjoy reading, and I loved fic she wrote. It's one of my top fan fictions I've ever read, and I love that she's being traditionally published as well. And if this novel is anything like the fic I read, and based on the title, it kind of feels like it'll have that same sort of sarcastic, humorous, but yet an underside of darkness vibes to it, I am anticipating this will be a 5-star read. It's the first in a slow burn enemies to lovers romantasy duology. I like duologies, featuring a scholarly healer and a gentleman assassin set in an exquisite fantasy world. I'm really looking forward to that. And last in this current collection, in October, Victoria Schwab, or V.E. Schwab, is coming out with a new novel, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. 3 young women, their bodies planted in the same soil, their stories tangling like roots. One grows high, one grows deep, and one grows wild, but they all have teeth. That sounds to me a little bit similar, yet different, to The Bewitching, where it's following the story of 3 different women, but I don't know anything else about it, and I want to go into it blind. So those are the books currently on my radar for 2025. There are going to be many others. I just haven't stumbled upon them yet. I feel like sometimes it's hard to find out what's coming out unless I was following each author independently. I'm pretty sure Kate Elliott might have one coming out in 2025. I need to go look that up, because that would be an auto-buy for me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this. Please share your top books that are coming out in 2025 that you're looking forward to, so that I can see if I'm interested in them. And as always, don't forget to support your local library.